Hola, hola. I'm Sulian Cruz Diaz, your Texas Rican host, and this is Una Preguntita. Each week, you and I take one big question and break it down to grow in this real and messy life we live in. From engineering to farming in Hawaii to running my own business, I have learned that life does not come with a manual, pero sí con preguntas, with questions. So, tell me, amigui, have you ever felt like you're thriving in one area of your life but lost in another? Yeah, been there too. Each week, you and I dive into the stuff nobody really teaches us: how to lead, connect, and communicate better, y con tools that you can actually use. Grab tu cafecito, get comfy, and let's figure this out together. Esto es Una Preguntita, where curiosity and understanding lead to action. Vamos! Okay, amigui. I am so excited for this episode today because I have a special guest with me today.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Hello, I'm so happy you are here today, Leomi. So, before we dive into our awesome conversation we're about to have, I want to give my listener tuning in, my amigui, a little background on you. So, is that okay with you?
Go ahead.
Awesome. Amigui, meet Leomi Lott, a PMP, a systems thinker, strategist brain, and a heart for supporting other project managers in their growth. I'm going to give you what you don't read on her resume. So, Leomi doesn't just lead timelines, she leads people. Whether she's guiding a national team or coaching project managers through her podcast, Power Minutes for Project Managers, which, if you are not subscribed to it, you need to be. It's called Power Minutes for Project Managers. I'll link it down in the show notes. Leomi makes you feel seen and capable and completely in charge of your lane. She believes that strong leadership starts with strong relationships. And today, she's bringing that wisdom on to Una Preguntita. So, Leomi, welcome to Una Preguntita, and I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you for having me and thank you for that intro. It makes everything sound so good.
Well, you are awesome. So,
Thank you.
yes. So, all right. We always get started on Una Preguntita with a question. So, Leomi, I'm gonna shoot it off at the very beginning and we're gonna come in hot. So, what does healthy ambition look like when it's rooted in relationships, not just individual achievements? I want to come in from like a different angle today.
So for me, healthy ambition really starts with self-awareness. You really need to know what matters to you, what your values are, what are your boundaries, what are your long-term goals, and you have to hold that up to what you're actually chasing. Um, when you're focused on only achievement, it's really easy to start chasing things that will maybe impress other people, or it is the path that someone else is choosing for you and kind of just leading you this way when you really want to go that way and you don't know how to stop it. But I think that when you are trying to kind of chart your own path, you really need to make sure that what you're doing is in alignment with yourself, while still maintaining good relationship with other people. And so when your ambition is rooted in relationships, your relationships will be more, or your ambition, I should say, is more sustainable, I think. And it's not just about what your next title is, it's about building a life and a career that feels like you. Because you are one person, like you can't divide your professional self. You may be a professional here and your person here, like, a private person, but at the end of the day, you're really just one person. And so everything really needs to line up.
So, why do we bring in that side of relationships into the workforce? Like, I'm trying to put together the pieces of why is it that we are pushed to network or pushed to have relationships in the workforce when I guess maybe it is a generational thing. We like to divide up between like work and life. And so why do things that we do in our life have to seep into our work, like the practice of relationships?
Well, I really think that when you're encouraged to network, it is good to have good relationships with the people you are working with for sure. But then, even people that you don't work with in a non working capacity, you may never work with these people, but relationship is really a very important thing. It's in my faith, it's biblical. And so your relationships are what are really going to carry you, and they're really just good for your mental health. And it's so good to not feel like you're out here on your own all the time. And so your network may be from different avenues of your life, but again, you are one person. So you're always going to be coming back, and whatever you bring, you may ski, you may skate, you may barbecue, you may go fishing, but all these things are connecting you with other people, and you don't know how these different activities and relationships will bring you into where you really want to be. It's the
Mm.
small things that are connecting us to each other every day.
And how do you tell the difference between essentially the network that you should build and the one that actually makes life better? How can you tell the difference?
Well, sometimes really the answer is in the question. And so, is this network, whatever you're doing, is it actually making your life better? You know, there's a financial guru who I listen to, and he always says, if you hang out with nine broke people, you'll be the 10th. And I think that really applies beyond finances. It applies to like your energy, your growth, your mindset. The people around you, they should really like they should stretch you. They shouldn't stress you out. And if you are leading your conversations or get-togethers and you're feeling drained instead of inspired, you should really be taking that as data, because you want people to help you become more of yourself and not feel like less of yourself.
Hmm. No, and it's super interesting you use the word drain. So that made me think about introversion versus extroversion. So introverts end up gaining energy when they spend time individually by themselves reading a book or just alone time, and extroverts gain energy by being with other people. And so their draining is the opposite, right? Introverts naturally get drained when they're in very social environments, and extroverts get drained when they're by themselves for too long. So a lot of times when we talk about social capital, relationships, networking, it's really geared towards extroverts. So how can somebody nurture their relationships in a way that actually matches their energy and still builds trust over time? Because that's the goal, right, of networking, of relationships. It's to build trust within individuals.
So I am actually an introvert, which people may find surprising, especially people who know me very well. But just in general, I have a podcast. I'm here talking with you now. I seem like an extrovert because I'm putting out that energy. But the truth is, I have to be prepared for these situations. And so it's the same way with just networking for me. I have to go into what are considered network with air quotes. Into those spaces feeling like I am prepared with my energy, with not necessarily a script of what I'm going to say, but I definitely like a slower, more intentional approach. I like to focus on meaningful one-on-one conversations instead of the what you hear usually is working the room. Big events can really be overwhelming for myself, for other introverts. And so I like to go in with a plan. Who do I want to talk to? You can find that out sometimes just by if you know there's someone in particular who you're interested in, they go to these type of events, especially if they're maybe going to be a keynote speaker, you're following them on socials, you might already know they're going to be there. Do a little kind of internet sleuthing. I don't want to say stalking, but,
We don't stalk.
do a
We
little
just gain
research, right?
information. Research.
Yeah, we're gaining information. And so, go in with that plan. Like, who do I want to talk to? What do I want to learn? And always follow up. Like, after you make these connections, I think that earlier in my career, that was where I came short, was on the follow up. but it was something that I was able to very quickly, how do you say, very quickly overcome. That's the best word I can think of right now. But to very quickly overcome, I did, just by following up, because I realized that that was where real trust was being built after the event and not just during it. So I started reaching out with light touches, and if I met someone who was maybe local, do you want to meet for lunch? Do you want to go? I'm not a coffee drinker. I say coffee, but I'll drink a little tea. I like Thai tea, not coffee. But, do you want to get together for something simple like that, something, local? But really light touches are with some consistency are really where trust is built.
No, that's super interesting. I follow a communications professional named Vin Gang, and he was saying that communication is a tool. And just because you're introverted doesn't mean you don't know how to play the instrument, play your voice, play communication, use communication. What it means is you have to be more strategic about where you put your energy. And that's, I think,
Mhm.
exactly what you were saying, right? Where you were like, what is my goal for this event that I'm going to? Who am I talking to? If my goal is just to do a touch and then be able to have a tea time after one on one, you're being way more strategic on how you're interacting with others so that you don't go drain down to zero and you don't have to use the same strategy an extrovert would use when they are starting relationships with others. So that was super interesting. I was connecting the dots of what I was learning with what you were bringing in today. Amigi, I want to do a quick pause right now because if an introvert, if a friend of yours or somebody you know entered your head and you're like, they need to hear this podcast, I want you to be generous. I want you to send this podcast over to them. Be generous with what you're learning and share the knowledge with others. So make sure you're sharing this podcast with somebody else so that they can also develop their skills. Okay, Leomi, let's come back to our conversation here. I have another question for you. What are the things we overlook that are actually quietly building these relationships without us even realizing it?
So I think it's really something like what you just said, about the taqueria. Social capital is really building up wherever you're showing up consistently. It could be your small group at church, your gym, a book club, even just how you engage on like a Slack channel at work. The purpose of your presence and how you show up when people need help. That's really good currency that you're building, good social capital. And you don't always have to be in like a formal networking, going, shaking hands, conference setting, because life is full of a lot of really small, repeated moments where people are starting to really know you and like you and build that trust with you.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. And I think you said something at the very beginning that was key. It's where are you showing up consistently? And I think that we overlook the value of consistency over time because that ends up building much greater than if you put in so much effort, but only for one time. You need that
Hmm.
consistent touch over and over and over again.
It's how muscles are built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It is. So, where does social capital show up in career growth in ways people don't necessarily expect? So, we And I mean career growth broadly, not just necessarily in what is the next stage above you, right? If you're entry level employee and you want to become a manager, I don't necessarily mean just hierarchical. I also mean personal growth. So, where does social capital show up in those spaces?
So, I think that it shows up when people say, I've worked with her, she gets things done. I think that it's often really underestimated how that kind of trust is built up and what it means to have someone to be able to speak on your behalf. A lot of promotions or referrals, they don't come from the loudest person in the room. They come from people that other people trust, people who are getting things done. And so it's like being the one who sends a helpful follow up email or even little things, remembering teammates' birthdays. I feel like where we are now, there's a lot of talk about who's ordering the birthday cakes. And, I think we get too nitty gritty on those things sometimes. Be the person who remembers your teammate's birthday. Say happy birthday. You don't have to get them a cupcake or anything. You can just say happy birthday. And people appreciate that. Earlier on, one of the VPs who I worked with, or one of the VPs who I worked for, he was an excellent gift giver. Let me tell you, he remembered everyone's everything.
Hmm.
And you could just see the way, like, it didn't seem like it was anything. It might have seemed kind of frivolous at the time that he was giving these gifts. And they were very kind of personalized gifts. He was like, oh, they like this kind of wine. I know they smoke cigars. Let's get them a cigar holder with their initials on it. Or let's send them this pencil that never has to be sharpened. Just, strange things that seem strange. They may seem extravagant.
Uh-huh.
Um, but they were also very simple and they were light touches. And they did two things when he was giving those gifts. It showed people that he was paying attention and that he, at some point, thought of them. Even if the thought wasn't that he remembered their birthday right then, it could be, oh, I know it's your birthday. And so I put it on my calendar. And so next year, I'm going to know when your birthday is. So really just start where you are, and that way you are building up that trust again consistently. It's very subtle, but it's there. You're building it.
That's so interesting. And it taps into this probably sounds a little mushy-gushy, but it taps into like the love languages, right? So if your love language is gift giving or gift receiving, um that makes you feel seen. It makes you feel like you're appreciated in where you're working or the people around you. It makes a big difference, especially within the work culture. Not only just you one on one, but also everybody, your whole team around you as well. And I guess my question also is how do you how do you use your social capital or your relationships? Because I think we talk about like, okay, how do I get it? But then how do you actually utilize it like a tool?
You have to use it very strategically, and I would say frugally. And in that sense, I mean, while you've done things for other people, and I think that at some point, every good relationship, and this is something I have a conversation with my friends all the time and my husband, I feel like all relationships at some point should be reciprocal. You may not get the same thing right back at the same time, and you may never get the same thing back. And you should not give expecting to get something back immediately. But when it comes to this social capital, how it's showing up and how you're using it, it's currency, you get to spend it. And so you're building into your little bank, right? You don't want to be asking for things all the time. You want to kind of stack your coins, and occasionally you can make an ask. And when you are a person who you don't really ask for things all the time, but you show up for other people, they trust you, they like you. I always say, it is underestimated. You need to be like, people need to like you in order to work for you, to work with you, and to work well with, like to get good work done. People need to like you. And I think sometimes people feel like that's not important, but it's so important, to be a good participant in this socially capitalistic world that we're in. People need to like you. And so, with that being said, every now and then you get to spend some of that. You get to ask for something in return. Or you may not necessarily make the ask, but people will be aware of your need. And this is from just communicating, they will offer to help you. And so, in that way, they're reciprocating. And so, that is the exchange that we are constantly in flow.
For someone that doesn't consider themselves a networking person or a person that likes to ask for things, is there like a methodology or a toolkit or small things that they can do that will pay off in the long run or that will help them as they're building their network?
I wouldn't call it a methodology, but I would say to just send one thoughtful note a week. That's it. one note to someone that you haven't talked to in a while, whether it's someone that you need to reconnect with, you admire them, you may have never talked to this person, just I saw you did this, they could be your second or third degree connection on LinkedIn. Comment on their post. It's just as simple as when you send that note that says, I saw this article and I thought of you. I saw this, maybe it's a silly meme, who knows? Silly but professional, especially if it's a professional space. But if it's not a professional relationship, you still want to keep it classy. But, if it's something that's
Mhm.
going to give someone a good laugh and you really did think of them, do that. What I started doing, like I mentioned earlier in my career, my shortcoming was not following up. And so what I started doing was again using my calendar and just blocking 15 minutes on Fridays, just reaching out to people, just boom, boom, boom. Like here's some quick connects. And a good tip that I got a while ago too, which was scroll back into like your text or your emails and then reach out to the contacts like who are at the bottom, like your furthest removed of
Oh,
contact.
it's so
And that
smart.
will just keep your contacts, yes, it keeps them kind of in a rotation of sorts so that they aren't falling completely out of your mind, right?
Yeah.
And that is a small habit that really paid off in big ways over time.
Is there anything that you wanted to leave my amigui with? Was there something that you're like, I have it, I figured it all out. This is what you can use.
Yes. So I have the PM Job Seekers Networking Playbook. And it's really not just for project managers. There are a lot of great tips in there. And you don't even really have to be looking for work. It's really just a step by step guide to building and leveraging your relationships that you can use as you are navigating. So it gives you some really good options for networking and tracking and how to follow up. But it is rooted in the methods and strategies from a project management perspective.
I love that. So, what was the title of that again?
It's the PM Job Seekers Networking Playbook. And that is going to be you can get that at powerminutesforprojectmanagers.kit.com/networking.
And if you didn't have time to write that down, Amigi, I will be linking it down below in the show notes. I know for sometimes I'm like driving and listening to the best podcast. I'm like, I need to get my hands on that. So don't worry. You could always come back or scroll down in the show notes, and the link will be right there at the very top. Every week, I have my family ask me, ¿Qué aprendiste? What did you learn this week? And so today, since you're on the podcast, I'm flipping it on you. So I'm asking you, amiga, what did you learn this week?
Whew. So it has been a week, but this week I am really learning how to slow down. It
Ooh, say
is,
that
it's
again.
summer. It's slow it down. We want to do all the things and be in all the places, but I'm really trying to focus on easing into summer without overloading my schedule. And I'm really trying to pay attention to what triggers me and creates stress or anxiety and giving myself permission to have fun without the need to make everything productive or be on just a very hard, tight schedule. Like I want to be easy. And sometimes that's hard for me, but it's so necessary. So it's a practice.
I feel like you're calling me out. You would have seen my schedule. Yesterday was insane. It went from 5 until 10 p.m. It was a rough day yesterday. So I feel like you're calling me out right now. Slow
Come
down.
on out.
So, Leomi, if somebody today wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to reach out and follow you?
Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Leomi Lott on LinkedIn. And that I'm Leomi Lott on LinkedIn.
I
And you can
love
follow
it.
my podcast, Power Minutes for Project Managers. It's everywhere that podcasts are.
I love it. So both of those, her LinkedIn account as well as her podcast, Power Minutes for Project Managers, will be linked below in the show notes. Thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Yes. Bueno, amigui listening in, that's the show. Si te gustó, if you liked the podcast, make sure to like it, make sure to share it, rate it, write a review. Tell me, ¿qué aprendiste? What did you take away from today? Como siempre, I'm your amiga Zulian, and I'm sending you off today con un huge abrazo, amigui. Nos vemos en la próxima.